So I'm here to introduce Antoinette. I had the pleasure of working with her at the Nerdery a few years ago. Also, I was her groomsman in her wedding. And she is a very mean developer. And I mean that. She taught the mean stack at Nerdery Prime Academy. So she has experience teaching people things. And hopefully here today she's going to teach you some good stuff about JavaScript. Over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian. Can everyone hear me? Are we good? OK, sweet. All right. So first question is, what video game have I been playing too much of? Anybody? Zelda, yes. It is my obsession right now. I have not beat Ganon yet, but I have all 4 of the Divine Beasts. So I am almost there. All right. So today I'm going to talk about real-time content with JavaScript. Kind of what I'm going for with this talk is if you are used to doing a lot of expression engine stuff, I'm going to show you how to incorporate some modern JavaScript into what you already know. So this is kind of a difficult-ish talk for me. I don't really do expression engine. I typically also don't really do a lot of PHP. So let's talk about me. So the first few panels in a row are personal things about me. I'm originally from Chicago. I moved to Minneapolis in 2010. I got married to this guy in 2013. And his cat lives with us. So that's the current state of our lives. I went to school in Chicago. I went to Illinois Institute of Technology. I minored in computer science, but my major was in technical communication. And then just this December, I finished up 2 master's degrees, one in business administration and one in software engineering. Business-wise, me and my husband own Rahway Smith. My husband's last name is Rahway. My last name is Smith. We do all types of development things. Most recently, we've been doing a lot of C, Java, .NET, and those sorts of things. Like Brian said, for 2 years, I taught JavaScript, a JavaScript-based stack at Prime Digital Academy. So that was MongoDB, Express, which you'll see a little bit of later, AngularJS, and then Node, which you'll also see a little later. In addition, I taught a lot of SQL. I actually love SQL. And also no one in Minneapolis does MongoDB. So, and then community-wise, I'm the co-founder of Blacks in Technology Twin Cities. I am the chair for the Mini WebCon committee. So Mini WebCon is actually accepting calls for proposals right now. Our theme is AI and VR. So if there's anything that you have, content, development, whatever, anything related to web, related to AI and VR, we are accepting calls for proposals until November 5th. And finally, I'm on the board for Technovation MN. Technovation is a national organization that aims to get girls exposed to technology at young ages. So I also do that. I thought I had a clicker on me, but apparently I walked away from it. OK. All right. So here's our adventure for today. Our goal is going to be to enable real-time comments on an expression engine site. In order to unlock this particular goal, we have 3 things that we need to do. We need to build an extension in Expression Engine. We need to build a client-side notification app in Angular. And we also need to build a server-side notification service in Node. So we're going to do all of those things today. I know, right? So let's see what's next. All right. So here's our map. Here's what's going to happen. When I taught, we spent a lot of time kind of talking about how the different pieces of the stack were connected to each other. And so on the left side here, we have the client side. So the client side is going to be your front end, the stuff that you see, the stuff that your users interact with. In addition, it's going to be the logic that drives that. So we have both the view, and then we have the brain. The brain is the logic that's allowing your users to like click on things and have things instantly happen, that sort of thing. So our brain for today is going to be Angular. And so then the next part is Expression Engine, which you all are familiar with. So So Expression Engine is going to handle our very first request. So what's going to happen is I'm going to pull up just the default Expression Engine site that comes with the Community Edition. There's going to be like a blog post. There's going to be some comments under it. When you post a comment, or when you make a comment and then you hit the submit button, it sends a HTTP post request. So that post request goes to Expression Engine. Expression Engine is like, I can handle this, and then it does some stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to use some Expression Engine tools called add-ons to go ahead and then after it's done doing what it needs to do, pass that information to our node service. So once again, we're going to be using an HTTP post request, but this time it's going to go from our Expression Engine server to our node server. Then our node server is going to take that, it's going to take the data, it's going to package it in a way that our brain wants to read it in, and then it's going to go ahead and send that back to the client. Then the client will update the front, the UI, and show you that new comment without having to reload the page or something like that. You'll see more. So that's the deal. Okay, all right. All right, so adventure number one. Adventure number one is making an extension in EE. So I got this from the EE website. They had a little section in their documentation called, what's the difference between all these add-on things? And so as I was reading it, I was like, extensions are hooks in the system that allow us to pass information. That's one thing I want to do. I want to pass information about the comment that was posted to my service. And it allows us to add functionality to an existing interface. So the comment part is that existing interface for me. I don't want to like create anything new. I'm trying to be like, I want to change as little as possible in Expression Engine. So I was like, this sounds like the type of add-on that I want to make. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and switch over to some code. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here because I'm going to assume that most of you did not come to watch me tell you about what TJ has already taught you on Wednesday. So, all right, so here's the default site. This is the site. I went to the Expression Engine website. I downloaded it. I tried to download it twice. They were like, no. So this is what I have. And so the part that's really actually that I care about for today is what a blog post looks like, and more specifically, the comments under that blog post. So here we have a bunch of content that was put there by the Expression Engine people for you to kind of get used to it. And then underneath it, we have a bunch of comments. So what's going to happen, or like what we want to have happen, is I want to look at this site, and whenever anyone posts a comment, I just want to like see it appear. I just want to see it appear. I don't want to reload the page, which is how it works right now. I just want to see that new comment. In addition, as an extra bonus, we're going to put in a little notification badge at the bottom so that whenever anyone comments on any post, on any page, we'll know about it. So this is the type of thing that you might do if you want to like drive engagement, kind of like keep people on your site, that sort of thing. So let's go ahead and just briefly look at what this extension does. So let's see if my terminal, all right, so I assume that's big enough, right? Is that okay? All right. Okay, so I have four repos. 3 of them will be public to you. 1 of them is private because it has all the Expression Engine code. But the one repo that I'm going to make available to you is one that's called EE Comment Extension. So EE Comment Extension has all of the files that I need to make this extension. We have add-on setup PHP. We have the really like the big part of it, the logic part of it is that ext.comment_notifier.php. So if we go ahead and just kind of look at that, I'm going to switch over to Sublime, and then I'm going to close that because that is too far ahead. So I'm going to go ahead and just open up the EE Comment Extension directory, and then I just wanted to kind of look at this extension right here. All the stuff up here is boilerplate type stuff. I got all of this from the Expression Engine tutorial, like documentation stuff. Nothing super special here that you could not find anywhere else. The part that's actually most relevant is this part here called send comment. So let me just kind of scroll down here. So this function send comment is actually going to be triggered whenever someone posts a comment to Expression Engine. So Expression Engine extensions give us access to what are called hooks. So if you go to the EE website, you'll see and you Google or you search for hooks on that site, you'll see an entire list of events that occur. Events that occur that you can then kind of grab onto and then do what you need to afterwards. So the event that I cared about is which one? Let's see. Did I put that event somewhere else? You could tell. Say what? The send comment is the event? Thank you. All right. OK, so send comment is going to load some helpers. Again, PHP is not like my thing that I do all the time, so this is all kind of fuzzy in my head. But what it's going to do is this send comment gets called by Expression Engine, basically. Expression Engine, when it calls send comment, it's going to give me the data from that comment. It's going to tell me if it was moderated flag. We don't actually use it for this extension. And then it's going to give me the comment ID. So what I do is I take that data, that comment data, and then I turn it into JSON. So JSON is a way to transmit data that looks like a JavaScript object. So when you're working with JavaScript a lot, you tend to trade data in JSON. And you'll see what JSON looks like in a little bit. So we want to turn that into JSON because that's what our node server is going to expect. So we turn that comment data into JSON. Then we set up the header, basically the header of our request. So every HTTP request has both a header and a body. The header is basically like metadata about that request. The body is then the actual data of that request. So what we want to do is we want to set up, OK, what type of request are we making? A post. So a post request is the type of request that you like to make when you want to send data to somebody. The header is going to be content type application JSON because we are sending JSON. And then the content, or the body, is going to be that JSON encoded data. So then what we do is we then do some fancy PHP stuff, and then we do file get contents, which then actually sends that post request. So first we build up the post request, and then we send the post request. So we send that post request to a server URL that is actually in the settings for the plugin. So I can show you where that is. Just give me 1 second. So basically, we get to set the URL of our service. Our node service has a URL that we talk to it on, and we set that in our actual EE UI. All right, so then if it's successful, we will see a log that says it was successful. If it's not successful, then we'll see that there was an error. And so just to show you where we can actually see where we set up that extension, I'm going to go ahead and go over here. So here I am logged in, or I'm about to be logged in to the site. And then if I go to developer, and then I go to add-on manager, and then if I make this bigger so people can actually see it, then I scroll down. I see third-party add-ons, and the third-party add-on that I built is called Comment Notifier. Comment Notifier has already been installed, and if I click on this little gear, I can see the settings for that. And here is that server URL. So that server URL gets set here. So whenever our service URL changes, we can just go in the settings, change it here, and then it'll talk to wherever our service is. So that is all the extension stuff that I think I'm going to cover. If we're good with that, then I'm going to move on to Node. All right. OK. All right. So at this point, this is what we have. If I go back here, we're not going to see anything special. So I want to actually move to my slides one more time. All right. So booyah, we've done that. first adventure is taken care of. If you want to see the repo for it, there is a bit.ly link here. Otherwise, if you go to my GitHub, which is exactly like my name on GitHub is that without the underscore, then you'll just see a bunch of repos that start with EEConf 2017, and you can see it that way too. All right, so did that. Awesome. OK, sorry, what's next? Actually, we're going to do Node next. So we're going to create our service in Node. So the reason I want to do Node first instead of doing Angular first is a couple of reasons. So Node is what I used to teach. I'm super familiar with it. I feel super happy and confident in Node. I used to teach Angular JS, which is Angular 1 point whatever. But today, I'm actually going to be using Angular, which is Angular 2 whatever. So Angular 2 Plus is pretty new to me. And so I want to start with something that I can kind of ground you in. In addition, doing Angular requires that you use Node. So seemed like a good place to start. So let's create a service. But before we create the service, I just want to kind of show you some Node stuff, just a little Node stuff, and then we'll talk about the service. And then maybe we'll get to my VM. All right, cool. So what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and go over to my terminal. And I just want to show you really fast how you just kind of build a really simple Node application. And then we can talk about the code for our particular service. So I'm going to just open a new tab here. I think, yeah, we're going to open a new tab. I'm going to go somewhere that I don't care about. I'm going to make a directory called like demo stuff, or just demo, cd into demo. All right, so now I have this nice empty directory that is waiting for me to make a Node application. So the things that you need to have done before you get here is you need to have installed Node. I run Linux all the time, so I just use the Linux package managers. You want to go to node source, you'll get like the URL that actually gets you all the packages you need, and then you'll do your regular apt-get install. If you're on a Mac, you want to use Homebrew. I mean, I would use Homebrew, but you can do whatever you want. That's just brew install Node. If you're on Windows, you must like Paint, and I'm sure you'll figure it out. So, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and type Npm Init. So Npm gets installed with Node. Npm is the Node package manager. Node package manager. So all that means is that if there is something that someone else has done, some third party, you're going to be able to get that code via Npm. Most of the stuff that we want to do with Node has been done before, and there's like a ton of packages available to us via Npm. You can also go to the Npm website and basically search for anything and probably find a package that someone has built. But Npm also allows us to kind of start the process of building our Node app. So Npm Init is what we type. We press enter, and then it brings us into this interactive shell. So this interactive shell is going to help us build a package.json file. Package.json files will include things like all the dependencies for our application. So any package that we've installed for our application will be listed in there. So that's going to be similar for PHP people as like Composer. In this case, it's going to ask me what I want to name this. I'm just going to leave it at demo. It's assuming that I probably want to use demo. So I'll press enter, and I'm like, sure. It'll ask for a version. Don't care, so I'll press enter. Ask for a description. Easy Node app. Sure. It's going to ask for an entry point. So the entry point is where does your application start? What is the first file that we need to go to actually get your application to run? So typically what I do is I call it server.js. I didn't create it yet, so I don't know if this is going to like be unhappy. It didn't say anything. Test command I never use. I probably should. Git repository, I don't have one. Keywords, Node, Express. We're going to use some Express. And body parser. Body parser. All right, and then author, I usually just put my email address, but you can put whatever you want, like your actual name. License, again. All right, So then it shows us like, okay, this is what your package.json is going to look like. So we've got a name, we've got a version, we've got a description. We have our main, which is like that entry point for our application. We have this scripts thing. So the scripts thing is pretty cool because if you do have some tests you want to run, you can do npm test and it will run whatever the line is there. So if I actually had something there, like maybe like a bash script or something, npm test would run that for me. You can also have other types of scripts, install scripts that will run on installation, pre-install scripts that will run before, et cetera, et cetera. Keywords to make it searchable, and then all the stuff that you saw already. Ask if it's OK, I say yes, and it's there. So now there's nothing here except this package.json. But remember that what I wanted to have an entry point that's server.js. So I'm just going to do touch server.js. Touch is just a command that makes a file for me, and it's going to make a file called server.js. So here we have server.js, and I'm going to go ahead and open that up in Sublime. So let's see. Let's find Sublime. Let's try and open. I actually never use Sublime, so apologies for the painfulness of trying to figure out how to use Sublime. So I put it under Antoinette, then I put it in demo, and then it won't let me open the file. Oh, because it's looking for a folder. That's fine. All right. So open the demo folder, open server.json, and it's completely empty. So the first thing that I typically do is I include express. So I'm going to create a variable. So anybody that's used to JavaScript, this is just regular old JavaScript. So I'm going to create a variable called express. I kind of want it to make this a little bigger because I feel like it's kind of small. Set. I don't know. I don't think I can make it. Oh, there we go. Hello. All right. So var express. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to write require express. So this is the way that we import our packages into our projects. So every language that I've ever used typically has some mechanism for like, oh, here's the third-party thing that I want to use. Now let's bring it into the project. For us in Node, that's require. So require express is going to bring the express package into our Node application. And then one thing that I forgot to do, which is actually pretty important, is to actually install express. So the other thing that we do with npm is we can install all of our packages. So npm install express, if I do -- save, that's going to save it as a dependency in my package.json file. So if I press enter, it's going to go to the internet. It's going to try and pull everything down. I'm actually really impressed by how fast that went. So that's good. If we go ahead and just cat out package.json, just to quickly look at it, we can see, if you remember what it looked like before, that we now have a new line here called dependencies. And inside of there, we see express and the version of express that we've installed. All right, so that's how that works. So if you ever want to install anything, that's exactly how you do it. And then if you ever want to bring that thing into your project, this is how you do that. All right, so we require an express. So, oh, express. What is express? So express is what's called a middleware. What I like to use express for is I don't want to deal with like Node's APIs because they're not that fun. So express makes it a lot more fun to handle HTTP requests and responses. And that's why I like to use express. So what we're going to do is we bring in express, and then we want to create our app. And so our app is going to be the thing that we attach all of our event and request handlers to. So in order to initialize our app, we call express as a function, and then that gives us that ability to do that. So then after we have that, one of the things that I always like to bring in is body parser. So body parser is really gruesome, as it sounds. Not really. So what body parser does is it allows us to, when we get a post request, so remember, post requests are the type of requests that we make when we want to send some data. In order to get that data, that body, we need to use body parser with express. Body parser is going to see that request, and then it's going to take the body and then put it on a request object. So to make that a little more clear, if we wanted to handle a GET request to this server, we could put app.get, So get is the type of request that we want to handle. Slash will be the URL that we want to handle it for. If we want to do to like slash like eeconf, we would do that. But we put whatever pattern of the URL we want to match right here. So then next we have what's called a callback. So if you're, I feel like callbacks are kind of more in most languages now. But basically the callback function is a function that's going to get called when we get a GET request for this URL. So once that request comes in, it's going to be like, OK, call this function. That's a callback function. So the function is going to always, always have a request object and a response object. The request object is a representation of the request that's coming in. And that request is going to have some headers on it, and it's going to have a body on it. It's going to have all types of stuff on it. The response is what we send back. So response is how we respond to the request. So if we get a request in, and let's say that it doesn't have a body. Maybe we just want to send like a hello world or something like that. We can just do res.send hello world. And that is what would happen as long as we remember to put an app.listen. So app.listen says, OK, now let's listen for requests on blah port. So the port number we can put inside of here. If we want to listen to requests on port 3000, oh, that should just be a number, sorry. That should be a number and not a string. Then you put app.listen 3000. And this should, unless I forgot some things because I haven't taught this in a while, this should give us a super, super simple Express app. So what we can do is we can go over to the terminal. And then I'm just going to hit clear and make that come like that. I'm going to do npm start. Npm start will start our application. And now that we started it, remember that we're expecting it to listen on port 3000. It's going to assume localhost. Localhost is when you do local development. Typically, your websites are going to run on localhost. So if we go to our browser and we do localhost 3000, press enter, we see hello world. Or maybe you don't because it's super small, but hello world is what we see. So that's our first Express app. That's basically how Express works. All right, cool. All right, moving right along. So this is weird because like when I teach, it's like I'm always answering questions. So I'm like looking at you like, ask me a question. Come on, do it. But don't do it. That's fine. All right, so all right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to actually look at the app that we care about, which is the notification service that we're building. So I'm going to go ahead. I've already written it, so you don't have to watch me like painfully write it in front of you. So let me just open up the folder that it's contained in. And then I'm going to, all right, so all that's in it, and you can't see this, and that's fine, but all that's in it is a server.json. This is a super simple service. All it's going to do for us, all we care about right now is we just want it to be able to handle that post request from Expression Engine. So Expression Engine is going to send a request to our node service, and then we want to be able to just kind of see the data that we're getting. That's how I usually like to start. I like to inspect the data and then see what to do with it. So if I open up my server.json for this particular project, it has a lot more in it. And maybe I will make this smaller because that's pretty big. It's hard to see things. All right, so if we step through it a little bit, what we'll see is we bring in Express, which I've talked about. We have our app. We have body parser. And so the next 3 lines, I'm not going to dwell on for right now. But basically, what you see on line 5 is it's saying requiring HTTP. So Node itself comes with built-in modules. HTTP is one of those built-in modules. That's Node's way, its native way of handling HTTP requests. So what we're doing then on 6 is we're kind of doing something weird. And the reason we're doing this weird thing is because we want to use WebSockets. So we're going to use WebSockets in order to keep a persistent connection between our client when we actually get to building that Angular client and our Node service. And so they're going to be able to just kind of keep that connection open with low latency and send each other information. So basically what we're doing on line 6 and 7 is we're setting up the ability for us to handle sockets, socket connections. On line 9, we are doing what's called an app.use. So I said Express is a middleware. So what Express is doing is it's allowing any request that comes in. The way I like to have students think about it is that, all right, remember this is the main file. This is where you start. When a request comes in, it starts at the top and it just works its way down. So that request comes in, it sees app.use. Every single request is going to go through app.use statements. So the first thing that's going to happen, the request is going to come in. If it has a body on it, we're going to then see that translated further down into a rec object that I showed you over there, line 12. A rec object that's going to have a body property on it. So rec.body is going to give us the data that's part of that request. So then if we go to line 12, then we see that we're going to handle a post request, app.post. Post means we're handling a post request. We want to handle a post request to the URL /comment/comment ID. So any request that comes in to /comment/comment ID is going to come into here. And then I put a console log here so I could see that request body. So it's going to come in. I'm going to then inspect that request body. And then that's basically how I built all the rest of this. But let's start from there and just kind of see what it looks like. So you might be wondering, Antoinette, but where did this comment/comment ID crap come from? And so good point. And I feel like I may have glossed over that at some point in the E extension, but I just want to put those things together so it's a little less magical. So I'm pretty sure somewhere. So I just hopped back into the extension for for Expression Engine. Okay, and so what I wanted to show you is that the URL that I'm actually trying to send a request to is the server URL. So remember I set that in the add-on form. So that server URL is localhost 8186. And then it's actually appending a string to it of /comment. And then it's appending the actual comment ID to it. So this is the request that we're making anytime we have a comment made in our Expression Engine site. So that's why this particular line, line 12, is going to handle that because it has /comment and then / whatever the comment ID is. All right. So the thing we care about right now is line 13. Let's see what that looks like. So I've installed the add-on. I've set the server URL to localhost 8186. The reason that that is going to actually work for us is if I scroll to the bottom, you'll see that I'm listening on 8186. All right, so then if I come back here, and I believe I'm logged in, if I scroll down and I make a comment, when I make a comment, what I'm going to expect is I'm going to expect to be able to inspect the node logs and see some information about that comment. So I'm going to say I am finally doing this thing at EEConf, need some sleep. And then I'm going to hit the comment button. And then I'm going to encounter an error. Oh, the form has expired. Oh my gosh, thank goodness. That's it. Okay. All right, so oh, let's see. Let's try and refresh that and make it stop doing that. All right. All right, so finally doing this thing, need some sleep. Hit the comment button. It's normal, I haven't done anything with the client side yet. This is fine. We can see that. What happened was that, and maybe you missed it, is that the page refreshed, and that's why we see our new comment. But then if we go over, oh crap. What did I not do? Does anyone know what I didn't do? Start the node server, yeah. I always do that. That's my favorite thing to do. All right, so Antoinette, maybe if you start the node server. So let me go to the tab that has my node server. All right, node notification service. Do an ls just for safety. I always just do ls, what's going on here. npm start will start the server, and then it's just kind of hanging there. You're not going to see that comment I just did because the server wasn't started yet. So let's try this again. Let's go over to the browser. let's say, can't believe I didn't start the server, but I really can. All right, so then hit the comment, go over to the terminal, booyah. All right, so you can see this is that console log. And it says, I put a little string in front of the console log, which you should always do so that you know like where this log is coming from. So request from EE came from Node. I just put that string there. And then that object is our JSON object. So our JSON objects are basically just key value pairs inside of little curly braces. So the first key here is channel ID, and that's 2. The stuff that I care about is like the entry ID of 12. I care about the author name because I want to be able to use that. So we got name Antoinette. I care about the actual comment, which is can't believe I didn't start the server. I do care about the comment date, et cetera, et cetera. In addition, I have been sending the entry URL, which we're going to use for some stuff a little later. But that is the object that we're getting from Expression Engine. All right. So now that we know what that object looks like, we can think about, well, like what do we want to then send to our client that is connecting to us via WebSockets? And so what I did was I kind of pared down the data because I don't need to send all of that data. I don't really care about all that data. So what I do instead is it comes in, I create a variable called EE comment, and I set that equal to the request body. So that's that object. And so the great thing about like using JavaScript-based stuff is anytime you send a JSON, it's just going to convert it to a JavaScript object. You should just use it like a JavaScript object. And so what that basically means is like on line 16, where I'm trying to determine the entry URL, all I do is I take that EE comment, and then I can use dot notation, which is what we use with JavaScript objects, to get a property off that object. So remember, one of the properties was entry underscore URL. This is totally a hack, this line, because like there's a question mark in the URL instead of a slash, and like stuff wasn't working. So anyway, that's a hack. Maybe you can figure it out. And then 18, the comment URL. So what I want to do is I want to then take that entry URL, and then I'm going to put a little anchor on it so that if you click on the comment, like when you see it in the notification, it'll like go directly to that comment. So then the next thing I want to do is I want to create the data I want to send. So when we talk about WebSockets, we say that we're sending messages. So the message that I want to send is actually this object, and I'm just creating just a regular old object, JavaScript object. So it's going to have the author name, it's going to have the text of the comment, it's going to have the date in a format that JavaScript wants to work with, it's going to have the location that someone posted from, because that's important to the existing Expression Engine comment module, and then it's going to have the URL for the comment. So once we put together the data we want to send, the message we want to send, then we can use sockets. We can use sockets to emit that. So we're going to emit comment underscore whatever the entry ID is. The reason I'm doing this is so if you are on a page, if you're on a page like blog post number 5011, and you're like looking at the comments, I want the comments for 5011 to only appear in that comment space. I only want to update the comment list with comments for entry 5011. So we're going to emit to clients that are listening for events for their particular page, the comments for that page, so that they will see them appear in the right place. And you'll see how that works a little later. Next thing I'm going to do is then I'm going to just submit another event with the same data called just comment. And so what that's going to do is that's going to show that notification badge to everybody. So everyone is just going to see at the bottom, oh, hey, there's a new comment on post some other page. So that's what it's going to do. So basically, we're using sockets to send two things, emit two messages. One message is going to be listening for a comment underscore some number event. The other one's going to be listening for a comment event. All right, so at the end of this, we do a response.send status. Whenever you have an HTTP request, you must have a matching response. If you do not put a response, the server will hang, and nobody wants that. So we just close it off and put that send status there, and that is the end of our service. End of our service. That's it. Oh, man. All right, I'm sorry. I didn't know that this would take so long. I'm going to run through this Angular part. So let's, okay. All right, we created the service. If you want to see that's the URL there. I will share my slides later if you want to look at that. Now we're going to create the client app. We're going to create the client app. So let's do that super fast. Sorry. Oh my gosh, where is everything? Okay. All right, all right, all right. So the things that we want to know, why is everything so hard? All right, ta-da, and ta-da. All right, so that's running. That's awesome. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm just going to talk about this Angular app right here. So Angular app, what I did, remember, I am new to Angular. I've done AngularJS like 1,000 bazillion times. Angular, the new Angular, I have not. So this particular Angular app, I started by just using the Angular CLI. So in order to get the Angular CLI, what you do is you first install Node, which we've already done, and then you do like npm install Angular CLI or something like that. And then it's going to give you access to a bunch of tools that you can run from your command line to create your Angular applications. So once you create your Angular application, it will look something like what I have here. I really should have installed tree, because that would have been nice. But basically, you're going to get a bunch of files. You're going to get like a crap ton of files. And you're going to be like, why is this happening? And so it's all really good stuff that you may not use that much. One of the things that I didn't talk about when we were looking at Node was that Node modules folder. So what you'll notice when you're working with Node a lot is that when you get a repo, there will be no Node modules folder. Node modules folders are huge. Like you don't want to like have people sending those like in your Git repos and stuff. So what we do is once we pull down a project, a Node project, we always do npm install with no arguments. Npm install will look at that package.json, which is why every time we install, we do --save, and it's going to look at that, and it's going to install all the packages in your package.json. So Node modules has all those packages. But remember to ignore your Node modules. All right, so then the stuff that we really, really care about is actually in the source folder. So if we go into the source folder, do an ls -l and just kind of see it as a list, we'll see an app folder. That app folder then is going to have in it, oh my gosh. All right, sorry, I'm like kind of, whew, okay. So apps, Angular apps. So here's the thing that we need to know about Angular apps. Angular apps basically always start off with a module. So module is kind of like the encompassing kind of place for everything that we're going to do. So you can see app.module.ts, and this is in TypeScript. I'm also super new to TypeScript. TypeScript is just a abstraction on top of JavaScript that makes it more object-oriented for people who actually like Java. And so app is going to be in TypeScript. So inside of each of your apps, each of your app modules are going to be components and services. And so basically, in Angular 1, what we had was an MVC architecture, a model view controller architecture. In Angular 2 plus, what we have is kind of a component-based architecture. So basically, everything that you want to build is going to be a component. And in our case, for the expression engine site that we have, we're going to have two components. We're going to have the component that's going to pop those comments in right there. It's just going to pop those in. Then we're going to have a second component that's going to show a notification badge down here. So those components then have some code in them. And I can just kind of show you one to see like what a component has. So if I just open up the Angular app here, go to source. All right, so let's look at the comment component. So components are typically composed of 4 files. Right here I have comment.component.js.css, which is just the styles for that component. So if you've never heard of like doing components, and I know someone's doing a talk on it later, so I expect him, I mean, I shouldn't expect him to do anything, but I would expect that he's going to go into components a lot more than I am. But basically, this is the CSS for that component. Like if you've ever went to a CSS file and it was like the longest thing you've ever seen, this is supposed to save you from things like that, because this will only affect that component. So these are some styles for my comment. And then I have a comment.component.html. So the interesting things about this particular part is that we have some really Angular specific stuff in here. So a lot of this is just HTML. Basically, this is just a template for our comment. So what I did was I looked at the expression engine comment, I took its HTML, and then I switched it out to make it more dynamic for what we need to do. So at the top, I have an ng4. It's an Angular directive. Directives are ways that we can augment our HTML to make things happen on the DOM in the Angular way. So ng4 is just a loop. It's just going to loop over the comments that we have, the comments that come in from that node service, and then it's going to display them in the same way or similar to how Expression Engine would display them. So, so we see ng4 equal to let. Let is the same as var. I mean, it's not the same, but you can think of it that way. So for every comment in the comments list of comments that we have, we're going to give it a section. Comment.comment, these mustaches, these double curly braces, will then interpret our objects. So our object, so comment.comment, our comment is what I'm just calling our comment object. Comment is the name of the actual comment. I know it's a terrible naming scheme, but that's what I have. We're going to get the author property off of it. We're going to get the date off of it. And then we're going to use a date filter that comes from us via Angular to make that date look the same, to make it more readable. And then in this span here, we have an ngIf. That's another directive that lets us do the things that we like to do, like conditional statements. So all this does is it checks if the comment has a location. If it has a location, it will display it. If not, it just won't show anything. So that's the template. And then last thing is the logic. All right, so this is the logic. This is the kind of part with all the kind of interesting stuff in it. So what we do is we create our component. And our component then, it says selector. So what that selector is it's what's the element on the page that I'm going to attach this template to. So your page is going to have some element called new comments, and we can just create elements called whatever we want. So it's going to attach any new comments to this new comment element on the page. In addition, we tell it, OK, here's the template URL that you're going to use. So the template that we use, I've already created. We just saw it. It's that comment.component.html. What styles do you want to use for this is the next part. And then providers is a service. So in Angular, our components shouldn't have a whole lot of logic in them. Our actual logic, our kind of harder stuff, should always be in services. So I have a notification service that I'll show you in a second. But this particular comment component, it's going to have an array of comments, because remember, we want to show that list of comments. So its instance variable of comments is that. It's going to have an entry ID, which is going to allow us to pull the entry ID off of the DOM and then be able to send a request that says, hey, I only want to listen for that comment underscore entry ID comment, etc. So what we do is we then create our class component called comment component. It has those instant variables. It has a constructor that's very similar to PHP. It brings in that notifier service. On initialization of that comment, we're going to go ahead and subscribe to this event. And if we go to the notifier service, what we'll see is we will see that the notifier service has that socket in it. So it's importing some third-party tools, which I installed with Npm myself. And so you're going to use Npm with Angular as well to install packages. So one of those is ng-socket.io, which makes making socket connections really super easy. So what all this does is it defines that get message event, and then it goes ahead, and if you've given it an entry ID, it's going to subscribe to that particular event, the comment underscore whatever event. If it doesn't have one, then it's just going to subscribe to the comment event, which is the part that's going to be on that badge. So the thing to notice about this is this particular notifier service is used in a lot of components. So in our case, the notifier service is used both by the comment component and by the notification batch component. All right, so I'm going to wrap this up, I'm sorry. So that's what this looks like, but let's see what it looks like when it's kind of running. So the weird thing, or kind of the interesting thing, but kind of cool thing about this is inside of here, I'm inside of my Angular comment app repo, and if I do ng-serve, so ng is part of the Angular CLI package, ng-serve is going to compile our TypeScript into JavaScript, and then it's actually going to serve up all of our stuff in a browser. So if I do ng-serve --open, it's going to go ahead and it's going to compile everything. It's going to pop open a browser, and it's going to show us our app template. So I actually have 3 modules in this. The first one is called app module. An app module is actually just kind of like a page, kind of a test page that just has a tag. Actually, let me just show it to you. App module HTML, the app component HTML has new comments. So new comments is the tag for that comments part. But the other part that's interesting is that we have an index page that is actually what's being served. And in that we have app root. App root actually has comments in it. It's a long story. But then we have notifications. So we have notifications, which is the tag for our notifications badge. And then we have app root, which is where that new comments tag that I just showed you is actually inside of. But anyway, so what we're seeing is we are seeing this particular page being served right here. So here's that little notification badge down here in the corner. But then the cool part is, if this works, is that once I send this comment, okay, everything is kind of hooked up. Hit the submit button. Then when I go over here, you can see now that our comment appears right there. Everything is kind of hooked up. That's my name, Antoinette. I'm the one that posted it. I posted it on 10/13/2017. And you can see in this badge, everything is kind of hooked up. So, so that is how it works. These are all in little pieces. However, if you want to see it all together, what you would need to do generally is you need to do an ng build. You then take all of the compiled JavaScript files and you bring those into your Expression Engine site, and then you just serve those files, and then you're kind of good to go. So what I want to show you, if you're interested, if I can find my presentation. So let's say that we did that. That's the link to the actual code. Is if you want to, you can actually play with the app on Heroku. So conf-of-the-wild.herokuapp.com is where the application is, and you can actually see it working. You all can just like write comments to each other. You don't even have to log in, and you can see those comments like kind of come in, and you can see that badge at the bottom. My slides, there's a URL to my slides. Questions? No, I'm sorry. That was a lot. I'm so sorry. Okay. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. You've been a great audience.